If you're working on clean air issues, you immediately start to center in on San Bernardino. San Bernardino is just east of Los Angeles. It's one of the most polluted, if not the most polluted, part of the United States. You try to figure out what's causing that air pollution. You realize the freight and logistics industry is the primary contributor.
Air in San Bernardino, in some ways, is governed by the air quality upwind. That is what is blowing to them from Los Angeles. However, they also produce their own pollution as well. That has to do with land use across Los Angeles and Southern California. Many of those places, because of the cost of land, have been developed in San Bernardino and Riverside counties.
You have a lot of local elected leaders who are allowing this to happen. It's probably some of the most explosive growth in warehousing in the country.
We get almost 40% of the cargo traffic that comes to us from Asia, China, Japan, Korea, and then comes to Los Angeles and Long Beach. And then they are put on the backs of trucks or rail and shipped out across the region.
We saw e-commerce just boom during the pandemic. We saw freight volumes come through the port at higher levels than we've ever seen. We've seen diesel trucks and other trucks on people's roads, and so the harms continue to roll. Those hit hardest by the pandemic are the folks who are hit hardest by this pollution. They're literally building this stuff in people's backyards.
The effects of air pollution are actually much more dramatic and widespread than most people understand. You know, with regard to whether air pollution is associated with asthma, with cancer, with other sorts of health maladies, the information is pretty clear that air pollution is a known carcinogen.
My son Leonardo, before he turned 1, he ended up getting sick and it was a cold. Then one night he just couldn't breathe. So then we took him to the urgent care in Loma Linda. And then they ended up giving him like steroids through like a oral syringe to kind of help his lungs expand and to help him breathe. He's had that done since then, like about 3 or 4 times. And he's 3 now. When they told me that my son had respiratory issues, I started crying because I got scared. I thought I had done something wrong. And then my husband told me, no, you know, we've been taking care of him, right? You know, it's nothing we did. So I asked them, you know, what do you think caused it? One of the doctors told me, no, it has to do with, you know, the environment. So just them kind of confirming that for me was a shock. This is something that I can't shield him from because I can't put him in a bubble. Trains could usually run for about, 5 minutes sometimes if they're fast, but this one has been going on for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes now, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. It might sit there and idle like the one behind it, and then there might be another one coming after it, because I think I do hear another one coming after it. Yep.
We have a surprising number of schools and parks alongside busy roadways and rail lines. And our recent research in the last few decades has shown us children who live closer to busy roadways, they actually had poorer lung function and smaller lungs. By virtue of breathing the air, it can affect their lifelong health and the duration of their lives.
There were times where we did want to relocate out of San Bernardino to somewhere else because we wanted a better life for our child. But at the end of the day, I decided this is where I had my child. This is where I met my husband. This is where I grew up.
What do we want? Clean air! What do we want? Clean air! What do we want? Clean air! What do we want? Clean air!
I was never aware that San Bernardino had such bad air quality until probably like when I had my son 3 years ago. I started to educate myself on what is happening, and then once I looked, I couldn't look away. Since it's mostly people of color in these communities that are being affected by it, which is why, you know, I feel like people don't really care a little bit. Because if it was a different demographic, I believe that it would have been changed a long time ago.
Amazon has got to go, hey, hey, whoa, whoa. Amazon has...
We're showing solidarity to all the warehouse workers and all the logistics workers across the region. 80% of the people here have family members or know somebody who works in the warehouse or logistics industry, be it driving a truck, working in a warehouse, or working near the railroad.
Our lungs are not for sale!
There's a lot of people here that have family members with asthma. There's people here who have family members who have passed away from cancer. And now there's a growing consciousness about the issue, and people are starting to fight back. In one fell swoop, a lot of these corporations could mitigate the issue of pollution, and they could create a high road job sector. This is what we're putting this banner up today for. Basically symbolize like the region and our fight.
On mute. I was on mute. Thanks, Yvonne. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. And I'll introduce myself, Bobby Joe Chavarria, Sierra Club, she, her pronouns, Sierra Club, Clean Field Transportation, but longtime volunteer, an activist in the goods movement, in the transportation movement here in the IE, and now working on transportation for both the Angeles chapter and San Gorgonio chapter of Sierra Club, to really help now move forward some really powerful rules to control industry and start cleaning up the air for us. So thanks so much for joining in. This is an ongoing webinar series talking about, most importantly, the actions that we can take right now for the AQMD. And so if I could get like a hand raised for all the folks who are already Sierra Club members, if you could raise your hand. Thank you. Hey, David. Hey, Yvonne. Thank you. And Brian. Thank you, Brian. Awesome. And so to the rest of the folks, if you didn't get a chance to raise your hand, or if you're not yet a Sierra Club member, please go ahead and feel free to join Sierra Club. But we always also are always working with community partners and allies for the fight for clean air, for the fight for conservation. And so we'll go back to the presentation a little bit about Sierra Club mission. Our mission is to explore, enjoy, and protect the wild places of the earth, to practice and promote the responsible use of the earth's ecosystems and resources, and to educate and enlist humanity to protect and restore the quality of the natural and human environment, and to use all lawful means to carry out these objectives. So that is part of where this webinar comes into. And again, if you're new to the space, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll have a chance to hear from folks. I just want to kind of get through the beginning of the purpose of this, and then we'll have a chance to talk and share about some things that are happening and where you can take action. Of course, we are the nation's oldest and largest environmental organization, and our top priorities are to transform our energy systems, ensuring outdoors for all, acting for justice, and protecting our ecosystem. And tonight we're really going to focus on that energy system in terms of getting rid of our fossil fuel economy, especially in the transportation sector. And so that takes us to our Clean Air Begins with Clean Transportation webinar series. And we'll be doing this through the summer as especially as we get close to a couple of key events that are happening at the Air Quality Management District. The headquarters is in Diamond Bar, but they are the Air Quality Management District that handles the entire LA Basin. So, hey, David, thanks so much for joining in and introducing yourself. So our Clean Transportation for All particularly is focused on the zero emission solutions for medium and heavy duty trucks, as well as the equipment at warehouses, rail yards, and ports. And yes, Maria, the ports conversation is part of that bigger conversation, right? Of heavy equipment, heavy machinery, big engines that are responsible for so much of our greenhouse gas emissions and so much of the deadly pollution that's in our communities. And so our idea is to shift to sustainable ecosystems, regenerative land use, and active mobility options, including a robust public transportation sector, our transit to trails, outdoors for all, as well as, again, really focusing on the big, heavy polluters, right? So that is where we are this, in the scheme of things in our campaign. And we do have a transportation related calendar that you all are welcome to subscribe to. And before I go any further, I do want to drop this presentation in the chat for you all to be able to see. So let me grab that. Let me grab that link for you all. Here we go. And with that calendar, we also have what our AQMD and CARB calendar. And these are the two regulatory agencies here locally that are in charge of our air. And so how many of you have, if you put a plus sign or a hands up on the screen, or a plus sign in the chat, if you are familiar with either of these two agencies? Awesome. Thanks. Of course, Yvonne. Yes, of course. And Dave, thank you. Brian, thank you. Priya. Yeah, so this is great. So many of you are already aware of these two agencies, and we have a calendar that you can subscribe to so that all of these relevant hearings and workshops and meetings you'll have a heads up on. And as soon as we get word from the agencies, we add that to the calendar so you always stay updated. But let's go back to now the Sierra Club and our theory of change with our partners. Our goal is to stop air pollution from those large transportation sources. And we can do that through regulation and public health solutions when we address emissions from trucks, buses, cargo equipment, locomotives, rail, big ocean going vessels. We're not there yet, but we can start that process, because pollution from transportation is the largest cause of greenhouse gas and air. Yes. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, and then now I wanted to drop here is the link to this webinar in the chat for you all. Thank you for your patience there. So, and then of course, building our base beyond our Sierra Club membership into communities like mine, like San Bernardino and Fontana and Ontario and the and Riverside and in the in the LA region, the Long Beach and LA ports areas, bring those folks into this cause. And the reason why we need all people on board is because everyone is feeling those impacts. And we know that now that the statewide annual mean temperatures have been rising, we know now that means more smog days, more ozone in the environment, and that just means deadlier weather for all of us, including the report that came out last month from the American Lung Association, where Los Angeles and Los Angeles Basin earned the 25th year of an F in air quality. But we can also see even more startling is San Bernardino, Riverside County, and LA County are the top 3 counties in the country with ozone standards above federal standards. 175 days in San Bernardino County, which is nearly half the year, right? Riverside County, LA County. And what ozone does is like a sunburn on the lungs, is the way the American Lung Association put it. And so this is not only harmful to everyone in the community, but especially harmful to our most vulnerable, young folks, older folks, and then, as we heard in the video, especially people recovering or having long COVID symptoms and those respiratory issues. This is just makes it much more deadlier, much more dangerous for us in the community. And so we start here talking about these key issues because folks have been fighting for a long time for recognition that we're in a severely polluted area. And so the CalEnviroscreen was developed to help us track some of these pollutants. How many of you are familiar with the CalEnviroscreen? Again, hands up or pluses in the chat if you've seen or heard of the CalEnviroscreen before. So here is ozone, and the lighter areas, ozone monitors. The lighter areas are where there's less ozone, but you can see as soon as it gets away from the ports, we're up into higher concentrations of ozone. Same thing with PM 2.5, which is particulate matter, so small, smaller than a human hair, but it contains a mixture of really poisonous, dangerous particles that are that can cause asthma, that we know have severe impacts on heart and lung disease. And then the same thing with now just diesel particulate matter. Again, we can see this entire LA Basin area just heavily impacted by these pollutants, and they can contribute to eye, throat, nose irritation, heart and lung disease, lung cancer. And of course, again, children and the elderly are the most sensitive to these impacts. So a lot of folks right now are probably experiencing what they call allergies. But much of that irritation can actually come from the air, the air pollutants that we know of. And how many of you have like perhaps made the personal decision to, focus on public transportation, to really watch your own, put some pluses or some hearts or some reaction of, if you've made the personal decision to not drive a gas vehicle, or to really limit your own personal travel. And that's the key, right? Is that we can make our personal own decision for sure, but consumer vehicles, while the transportation sector is part of the consumer vehicles, the majority of the greenhouse gas emissions come from the heavy duty vehicles. They only comprise about 10% of the vehicles on the road. They generate more than 25% of the global warming emissions, 45% of the NOx emissions with the nitrous oxide emissions, and nearly 60% of the direct particulate matter. So, and this is a video. I shared it last time. I'll share it again. I was driving on the freeway, and about every 30 to 45 seconds, that truck would emit that mass of soot into the air, and they're not even carrying a load at this point. So imagine what this truck is contributing. So we can't also, while we can't put it on just consumers, we also can't put it on the individual truck driver, the individual small business operator. We have to put this burden for cleaning it all up on the big corporations that are responsible for all of these heavy duty as all of these heavy duty operations as an industry, which is why we reached out to folks last year, in the last couple of years, and really worked on the warehouse indirect source rule. How many of you are familiar with that? The warehouse indirect source rule, thank you, Yvonne, again. Yes, awesome. And awesome. Thank you, Pearl. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes. So we focused on, again, those heavy duty trucks, vehicles at warehouses, and we won. And we've seen some improvement, right? This was, but because of our unique geography, those improvements don't stay with us, right? We have, this was last year, right after the big storm that came through here, obviously dropped a ton of snow on our mountain range, cleared up the air, cleared up the valley from all of the emissions. But that lasted for a day. This was the following day, 24 hours later, after operations sort of resumed as normal, and we didn't have a storm and its winds pulling everything out of our area. So this is what we see on a normal basis. So I want to stop here and ask, just really have folks go around and maybe share, if a couple of folks would be interested in sharing like their own personal experience with the air quality, with exactly, Yvonne, clear skies don't necessarily mean clean skies, and especially with the PM 2.5, which is so fine, the particulate matter is so fine that it actually can't be seen. What we are seeing is the soot and the heavier pollution, but the very much more dangerous and smaller pollution is really not visible. You're right. Is there anyone that would like to share a quick, personal story as far as like what you have experienced being exposed to this environment? Hi, Cecilia. Good to see you again. Yes.
I do have something similar to what you shared, but a little bit larger than that. So growing up, I'm sorry.
go ahead, please, Cecilia. Yeah, it was you.
So yeah, growing up, I actually lived in Compton in a neighborhood that was right next to the Compton airport. And basically all around me, all the kids around me all had asthma. And I kind of like, it was so like, there were basically more kids with asthma than not. It seemed to me that I was kind of jealous. You know, at the time I thought, you know, now I know better, but I mean, it wasn't like I was not affected myself. Similar to what you said, when you shared about your allergies, I thought I had allergies because I always tell people growing up, and even today, I always say, I've always been a snot-nosed kid. Like, I just always have snot. You know, I'm always wiping my nose. I always was that kid. And I've gone to the doctor and they said, oh, you don't have allergies. So, I'm like, why do I have, why am I such a snot-nosed kid then? Yeah, I've been figuring out, similar to you, it's the sinuses, it's, just the air pollution that I'm dealing with, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Thank you so much, Cecilia, for sharing. And Al, you have your hand up?
Yes. I'm old enough to remember just how bad it was in the San Gabriel Valley. Um, I actually went to college in the San Gabriel Valley, and the story was that some students would go to college, and 3 months later they'd realize that there were mountains to the north of them.
Right.
And if you went out to play tag football in the afternoon, you had to kind of pace yourself. If you started started really getting out of breath from exercise, you could kind of feel where you couldn't breathe in very deep. And that was, I'm not sure whether you call it asthma or what, but it was definitely something that was noticeable.
Yeah.
And notorious. When I went to my first job, I lived in Monrovia and bicycled I didn't have a car at that time. I bicycled to work, and I wore goggles so that the air streaming by my eyes wouldn't make my eyes run all the time. And I was careful not to, exert too much to get out of breath. So, so I can see just how much improvement there has been made, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al, so much. Yeah. So thanks everyone for, for kind of joining in tonight and talking about now, where do we go from here, right? I don't think any of us are surprised that our air quality is bad. If we've lived here for any length of time, we understand that our region, again, because of our geography and because of because of the operations that are in our communities and are sort of doubling down on these industrial operations like logistics coming from the port, getting onto the rail cars, onto trucks and trailers, and going into warehouses. We're supposed to be improving, but instead we're actually going backwards because we're not addressing the bigger issues, right? So here at Sierra Club, oh, thank you so much, Iman, for dropping that in. Yes. Here is us fighting for clean air solutions. And we do have a couple of options on the table right now, including the warehouse ISR that we worked to get passed. And it was many of these same folks working in coalition that helped us make this a reality, and that are still fighting, right? That are still fighting for some of these solutions. The Moving Forward Network is actually helping us host a regional rail convening later on this month, and there are still spaces available for Sierra Club members and our community allies. So if you're interested in that, I'll share some information later. Our Alliance for Electric School Buses is a national campaign that's keeping us apprised of all of the latest developments at the EPA and the federal government, with resources and tools and money that is now available for districts to clean up their school buses. Our Los Angeles County Electric Truck and Bus Coalition are also fighting at the AQMD, fighting at the AQMD, but also fighting at the LADWP and at the LA Metro, to make the transition to zero emissions as soon as possible. Again, pushing to take advantage of as many federal grant money from the IRA and from the Jobs Act that we can get, and bring it to our community, because every little bit is going to make a difference, but especially these bigger heavy duty vehicles that roll through our neighborhoods. The other big course of action with the Truck and Bus Coalition is also refuse trucks that go through our communities, every week. And are there, and sometimes some of the most polluting vehicles that go through a neighborhood. And so we know that we can't do it ourselves, but we also know that Sierra Club members and supporters are so invested and so interested in, again, the environment, that it's imperative that our volunteers and our chapter and group members really start to plug into these different areas that we can to support, because there's just so much work to be done. But in coalition, it's not just us. So we had a really fabulous action at LA City Hall at the end of April, where we were able to pull together folks with a lot of media attention and really demand from Mayor Bass to deliver on some of her campaign promises to clean up the port, help us clean up the air, and really work towards improving public health because of pollution. We also did a die-in that day. And so folks, we did a die-in for 6 minutes. That's the 6 years that she has left to deliver on the 2030 promise that she said we'd clean up the ports by 2030. So we gave her 6 minutes of what it would look like, which some of our coalition members pointed out to the 8 years that gets reduced from life expectancy for our neighbors who live closest to the ports. Here in the IE, we know that equals to something like 14 premature deaths a day in terms of health impacts, heart disease, chronic pulmonary disease, any respiratory issues, not to mention the tens of thousands of hospital emergency visits for our kids having asthma attacks, and our adults who are now having a recurrence of their childhood asthma as adults and into their senior years. So here again with the coalition, we were able to actually put up, as we were fighting for what now has been approved, the Biden administration doing a commercial hovercraft waiver. I'm sorry, they did the administration approved a $300 billion fund for ports, clean ports. And we're still waiting on the EPA to approve their waiver. So we did put those messages out on public transportation sites in DC, calling on the EPA. So again, we're not operating alone, but we're just amplifying our voices together. And the reason why is $1.2 trillion in public health benefits, missed workdays, hospital stays, premature deaths, illnesses. We have a lot to save, and this could impact so many people if we start forcing industry to do the right thing. So what's the right thing that we're calling for? Well, we know that our region, where we see the black dots for warehouses, are also already suffering from the cumulative impacts of power plants, of our highways, of the rail yards, of the port systems, and the dry ports, not only the seaside ports, but also the dry ports where cargo goes directly from the ports to a rail yard station. And then, of course, the warehouses, the factories, and we're losing much of our agriculture in this region, but all of this has been contributed to our poor air quality. And so many of us, and yes, and the logistics centers for sure. It's the warehouses that, like, times 5, and the warehouses, instead of 100,000 or 200,000 square feet, the logistics centers that turned warehouses into 1.5 million square feet of operations, which means hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of truck trips daily, right? And 24/7 operations, which then gives no relief to the communities and the neighbors around them. And so this particular slide points out something that we have named as Sierra Club environmental racism, knowing that redlining and just sort of a policy, industrial policy that has allowed industry to operate without really any controls in certain communities. And so how many of you recognize these regions, or where you might be living? I live over here. So, yep, right along that region, right? This was by design. And so we have to absolutely appeal to the folks who have that control, have that power to help us mitigate, erase some of this by design attacks on our lungs and our lives. And one of those places is the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And I want to point out the victories that we have had at these spaces, because this is how we are going to continue to improve our communities. In 2022, we fought for an air quality management plan that talks about zero emission and zero to achieve the attainment. Attainment meaning the goals that the EPA has set for us to clean up our air. We have never reached attainment goals because of our geography, because of our basin, because of our valley, and also because the industry, while it's cleaning up and it is better than it was 30, 40 years ago, the operations are exponentially grown, and again have resisted any kind of regulation or control on their operations, especially the ports and especially the rail yards, saying that as a local district, we do not have authority to impose anything on these national and federal operations and international operations at the ports, right? But we were able to advocate and win on that. And it also it did validate the indirect source rulemaking. And what an indirect source rule was our biggest win in 2021, and has been defended 3 times in the courts, is that we can mandate warehouses, those logistics centers, to mandate zero emission and clean energy on those larger warehouses over 100,000 square feet across the basin, knowing that they are an indirect source of emissions just because of their operations. They are magnets for pollution. And so they must work towards mitigating what they're attracting to their operations. So not only do they have to clean up their own operations in terms of their own yard vehicles and their own operations with starting to put renewable energy like solar or wind, they have to provide charging stations for employees, but also turn around and start offering and implement or installing charging stations for the trucks that visit them. So then they're now a magnet for clean zero emission trucks to come and work in their facilities. So this was like a huge, gigantic win, and nothing like this had been done in the country. And so this is the model that we're going off of to not only make sure that the warehouse rule is implemented, but also that we can do these same things at the rail yards and at the ports. And so here at CARB, same thing. We had some wins, right? We had some really great things to deal with these piecemeal operations, like the locomotive rule, like the advanced clean fleet rule, like the Harborcraft rule, where we can again push for 100% zero emission technology, for that to all happen as soon, and setting dates to these, and then now our goal is to push the AQMD, because our region is so bad, to even maybe surpass these benchmarks that CARB has set. But it's winning. It is a win in that mobilizing Sierra Club members, our coalition partners, making these phone calls, advocating and lobbying local elected officials who sit on these boards. This is how we make change. That isn't sexy. It is very wonky, regulations, rules tied to very dense reports that like talk about how we're recording pollution, how we're measuring it, how we know where it's coming from. But at the end of the day, it is these places that are making the decision that can impact our air quality, that can impact our lives on a daily basis. And so I want to take a break here and just talk about where you folks feel, if anybody's ever taken an action, ever spoken at an AQMD meeting or a CARB meeting, or yeah, Yvonne, you have your hand up. Please share.
Yeah, I've been attending AQMD meetings since 2009. So I was there working alongside the Sierra Club My Generation campaign, where we would truck in busloads of kids, from young people from the Inland Empire. And those kids were phenomenal. They'd have to wake up like at 4 a.m. to get on the bus to make it on time to the meetings. And they would come in busloads. And they were just incredible. Their testimonies really were moving, how, they just shared their own personal stories and how the air pollution in the LA Basin and in the Inland Empire were affecting their loved ones. And yeah, I gave those kids so much credit for what they did. And we do have other allies here. So later on, maybe Bobby Joe and I can talk together, and I'll tell you about some of the other allies we have here that are also fighting against air pollution in general and at the ports.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah. So this is part of what this webinar series is also really striving for, is to start to rebuild that movement that sort of, so two things happened, right? We were in the middle of COVID, the warehouse rule passed, and then like real COVID, happened. And so the potential to be able to gather in person was limited, was non-existent. And so now we're rebuilding that movement and reaching out to folks who had participated in it before, because now what we have before us is that AQMD rule that is actually set for August 2nd. They're going to be ruling on the rail ISR. And tomorrow, they are actually holding 2 workshops about the rail ISR that you all can plug in to listen to and make public comments. So I'm going to share this slide. I skipped over, if you're following along on your own screen, I skipped over a few just to really emphasize this, because it's like, you know, it's on us. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow and Wednesday. Tomorrow during the day, the public workshop, and then the evening community workshop on Wednesday. And so if you have, I'll also drop into the chat again this presentation. If you scroll to this page and click on this, it will take you to the AQMD or way to RSVP for the virtual event with us, or and then you have this information for the AQMD how to call in and how to participate. So this is like huge, right? Like this is our opportunity again. If we're not ready yet at the bus loads of youth yet, but we can start to build towards that. And now is the time to really take action for that. Any questions here? Yeah, go ahead, Al.
I'm confused. Is this going to be in addition to any other input that we can plan?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay. So hopefully, okay. So, all right.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point. Because we can back up a little bit. So our targets of the AQMD are the board members, right? And they come from different places. The Senate Rules Committee appoints somebody. The cities in Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange County, they all appoint representatives from their city governments. Los Angeles has a few. And then the board of supervisors at each of the counties also appoint members to the AQMD board. So all of these folks are locally elected representatives, depending on what neighborhood you're from, right? What area you live in. So that's the current AQMD board. They oversee staff. Now, staff and the board were heavily criticized very recently for hosting a retreat in Rancho Mirage, away from the ports, right? 70, 80 miles inland, and said, the editorial said, SoCal air quality officials haven't acted to cut port pollution. They escaped to a desert resort instead. And so this takeaway quote, next time you take in Southern California's notoriously hazy skies and dirty air, remember that smog regulators still aren't using their power to crack down on the region's biggest polluters. And so what that meant for us was AQMD staff had proposed and had let us know that they were going to be holding 3 community workshops in the region, San Bernardino, East LA, and Wilmington, in-person workshops. They were scheduled for last week and this coming week. We had asked the AQMD staff to give us those dates, give us those times, because it takes a while to engage community and give them alert them to what's happening. And instead of finalizing those dates and announcing them with good notice, we got notice about 2.5 weeks ago that they were canceling all of the in-person and only doing the 2 virtual workshops, and that is it. And so that is what then community, myself included, with our coalition partners, said, let's do a community-led workshop. And so right now we are proposing events in June, in a couple of weeks here in Ontario, and possibly either late June or early July in Wilmington, so that we can bring this information, because not everybody's getting this news that these virtual hearings are happening tomorrow and Wednesday. And then that's all we're going to hear from staff about the rail ISR until it goes to, we're here a little bit this Friday at the board meeting as they set the public hearing for August, but then that's it. And we think that there needs to be more time, more public input. How many of you feel that way too? Raise your hand. Put a plus in the side. And then Yvonne, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say that it's possible the AQMD change their minds about the in-person meetings, because the wastewater results for COVID in this area are starting to rise again.
Oh.
So that may be why they decided to stick with virtual meetings.
I see. So like a public health.
Yeah, I can't go to these meetings in person anymore.
Right.
I am way too vulnerable. But I appreciate the fact that they're still having a virtual meeting at least.
Right. Right. And you know what, thank you for bringing that up, because then that makes that actually reminds us to be much more mindful of our in-person meetings that we do. Make sure that we provide protections for folks.
Please mask up.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. So this is where we are now. And these are the demands. So if you have a chance to, Dave, yes, those meetings did go to Zoom. They did go to Zoom, but they're happening tomorrow and the next day. And then that's it until the board votes on it in August. So we are in the public comment period. So any of our communications to AQMD, at this point, we can reference this rail yard ISR, and it can be included in those comments to the board before they vote on it. And so that is the other reason why we wanted to have the in-person community workshops, so that we could help folks understand how to make public comments, what it is we're asking for, and making sure that the AQMD staff hears it, as well as getting that information to the board in time for their complete packet of information that they'll receive. So I skipped over a slide that kind of talked about the ISR. Does anybody have any questions on that piece of what an ISR is?
Why don't you go over it just for anybody, like me, who's old enough to forget things?
Awesome. So our indirect source rules, ISRs, again, reducing harmful air pollutants, including NOx, particulate matter, from operations at various transportation and industrial facilities. So again, those magnets for dirty operations. Again, we passed the warehouse ISR. We are working on the rail yards ISR. And then staff has promised by the end of the year, they will address a ports ISR. Originally, the proposal from industry was, let's just do a memorandum of understanding. Let's just do an MOU that says we're going to try to make it cleaner, and you're going to try to not charge us anything or force us to do anything or make us spend any money or fine us for anything. And community was able to push back. Coalition members were able to push back and say that is not sufficient. The AQMD absolutely has power to ask for more, demand more, and we are demanding more. And so we pushed those MOU conversations into an indirect source rule. And again, all about controlling emissions, which then means controlling the equipment, which then means forcing operations to transition into zero emission and to true tested zero emission technology and fuel systems, so that we can work on cleaning up our air once and for all, ensuring that we're setting those reasonable targets, and also like really pressure filled targets, because if we let industry come up with their own timeline, they would never invest any money to save lives. They will save their money to make more money, and that is the bottom line. And at the end of the day, they should not be allowed, and we're saying the AQMD absolutely has the authority to enforce some rules, so that these folks can't continue to make money while still putting us all at risk and in danger. So there is our indirect source rules. And so again, warehouses done. As far as the rule has been established, we're still working on pulling together a team for implementation and enforcement. And we will have a separate committee on that conversation, especially if you live in an area that has tremendous amount of logistics, warehouses, truck operations, like the Inland Valley, Fontana, Ontario, even along, so La Puente, like along that 10 and 60 corridor, who see the trucks, on the daily. As well as those rail yards like in Colton and San Bernardino and El Monte and Mira Loma. And my cat started to talk to me. And so rail yards, that's where we're focused on. But then again, transitioning and doubling down into that ports. So this is like a long-term, campaign that is just getting started, to really, again, push industry to do the right thing. But there's never been a more opportune time, because the federal government has done so much to focus investment for these ports and these rail yards to clean up their operations. Right. And with all of those previous rules that we have done and all of the previous legislation and wins that we have done for communities, this completes that puzzle, this missing puzzle piece of, again, wave after wave of pollution that's just nonstop because of the logistics and cargo transportation industry. When we make this transition, we already know the federal government has already put tons of, almost $1 trillion, right, in benefits, in grants, in incentives for local communities, to empower local communities to make this happen at the industry level, including, and the benefit of that is green jobs, cleaner, greener jobs that are working on cleaning up the pollution, working on doing that transition to cleaner zero emissions, and then means workers like at the ports, our truck drivers, our warehouse workers, they are not working in completely polluted environments either. So we're cleaning up workplaces, we're cleaning up the community, and we're also transitioning into a whole new green economy versus our fossil fuel economy. So this is where we see that strong indirect source rule, this rulemaking can have this benefit. And if, again, if we know industry will just wait until they're forced to do it, well, then let's force them to do it a little bit, right? Because we need all of this. And we know that industry will also wait even when they're losing out on potentially millions of dollars in incentives, just because either they're scared to, some CEO or some manager is afraid to make a mistake and investing in the wrong thing, or, hey, nobody's pushing us to do it, so why would I do it, right? And so this is our opportunity as community to really to really move forward. And so our goal is that they should be adopted, both rail and port, by the end of this year. So January 2025, these both should be done. And it's not a sure thing. As we talked about this AQMD board, we can see that we don't have the votes right now to make it pass. The green would be folks who have committed a little bit, right? But we don't know for sure if they're really, really going to be there. And then the 2s and 3s, again, they could go either way. And so that is the other reason why we thought community meetings made sense, to put pressure on the local officials near their own homes, near, you know, where they live, to put pressure on them to see community support and hear community testimony about why it matters so much. So right now we are down a couple of votes. Yes, Al.
I'm sorry, finish that.
So yeah, so there's 13 members on the board, and we need 7, and we likely only have 4 votes at this point, 4 for sure votes, and the challenge also is Veronica Padilla Campos, who is absolutely our a champion for us. She's actually on maternity leave through September, so she's not even going to be able to vote. So we've got work to do to put pressure on the rest of the members of the board. So
does Veronica have an alternate who's good?
So no, we're trying to confirm with the board if she's able to like put a proxy in place, and that if they would have the authority to do that, but we haven't had that confirmation yet.
Oh,
we're thinking that there's just going to be a missing vote.
Oh,
yeah. So
the scandalous thing is that the people from the Inland Empire, the people on the board from the Inland Empire, are just not representing their constituents, because people from the Inland Empire are the most affected by the smog. The smog blows inland.
Yes.
There was a time when the mayor of Riverside was an absolute leader. In fact, I think it was that the AQMD building was named after him. And am I right?
If you're referring to now I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
But he was a longtime professor at UCR.
Ron Loveridge.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, in coalition meetings, I live in Fontana, but I'm, obviously in coalition meetings with folks from LA region. I have to apologize for our politics in the Inland Empire, because absolutely we don't have climate champions. We don't have clean air champions. We don't have community champions. We have folks who prefer that laissez-faire, let business decide what business will do, and it'll all work out. And that has not worked for the health and safety of our community members, nor has it worked for our working families, nor has it worked for really our local governments, who are having to just double down on logistics instead of getting real creative and excited about, again, a new opportunity of dealing with the climate crisis by going to zero emissions. What does that green economy look like? They're not engaged in any sort of creative operations. How many of you have ever talked to maybe one of your local officials, even if it's not any of these folks, but somebody on your local city council or your local board of supervisors, or even your local school district? Raise your hand or drop a plus sign in the chat if you've ever had a conversation about clean air with these folks. Yes, of course, Yvonne. Yes, absolutely. Of course, Al. Yes. So it's those conversations that we just need to have, right? So we talked about these workshops. who can sign up for and maybe attend one of these meetings tomorrow or Wednesday? And then I'm going to drop in the chat. Here is the flyer, this flyer that has that login information for y'all for tomorrow and Wednesday.
Are they, it doesn't say how long they're going to be?
They are, they're probably going to be about an hour to an hour and a half, because
That's all?
Yeah, because it's just going to be staff presentation and then whoever shows up for comment, and that's it. And we're counting on tomorrow's event to probably be very heavy industry leaning, because they have a bunch of paid folks who can show up in the middle of the day and head out there and fight for their economic interests. So yeah, an hour and a half is probably all they have scheduled. They said AQMD staff did say that they would leave it open for as long as we had folks who wanted to keep talking about this issue and ask questions and get clarity. But they also recognize that it's very hit and miss of how many folks we can get out. I am new to the position, just getting started with our Sierra Club members to understand and get engaged, as well as our coalition members. A lot of the coalition groups aren't member-based organizations like we are. So, you know, they have expertise, but they can't turn around and turn out, 10, 20, or a busload of youth to show up. So we're working on that, but we're not there yet. And then these community-led workshops, which again will still give us time to make those comments. And we did get a commitment from AQMD staff that, oh, awesome, Yvonne, thank you. Yvonne said that some of the allies will be there for sure, and she could try to attend, but can't make any guarantees. These are all virtual, so at least for this week, it's all virtual. So, definitely the call-in is the only option. The community-led workshops, we are still working on finalizing those dates, but I think June 21, absolutely. Thank you, Al. You can make it to one or both. June 21 happening in the Ontario region for San Bernardino, Riverside County. And then we're still working on the Wilmington Senior Center. Late June or July is what we're looking at now for those in-person meetings. And then this is the demands that we are asking for. Facility-wide emission reduction targets, eliminate any unnecessary regulatory off-ramps. And that means like giving the rail the rail yards an out by saying, oh, well, our operations, like the economy is bad. And so the operations have decreased. And so we shouldn't be subject to any rules because we're just struggling right now because, operations. But typically what they do is they just move operations somewhere else so that they're not happening and they lower the throughput, how much freight and things go through their facility so that they don't have to be obligated. So we are saying don't give them any unnecessary off ramps for that. Make sure that the infrastructure component must require commitments supporting broad scale facility-wide transitions to zero emission. And what that means is, and what the rail yards and industry at the ports as well have said is, oh, the grid can't handle it. Thank you, Yvonne. Yes, East Yards will be there. The grid can't handle it. And so, we can't install zero emission stuff now because we won't have the power. And what we're saying is that the rule should include reporting on their infrastructure plans, including any new facilities to start at zero emission operations. And also that the AQMD must empower our communities with the information and access and a role in making these decisions. which is why we're forcing that community-led conversation and demanded a commitment from AQMD for them to participate as well. And they have made that commitment. So, so that is like our current campaign, our super path to clean air through our clean transportation pathway right now with the rail ISR, and then in 6 months the ports ISR. So who's on board and excited about like these opportunities, even though it's wonky rulemaking? And I saw your hand up, Al.
Yeah, definitely I'm going to plan to be there. There was one hearing I was at where there was actually one person from one of the regulated facilities or whatever who said, you know, actually regulations are good things because they have a level playing ground. So those of us who want to do good things aren't going to be penalized for spending the money as compared to those who don't want to be. So, you know, he's the only person that I ever heard say that, but I think that's a really, really good thing to quote back at them. So, you know, let's keep that in mind to say that regulations give a level playing ground.
That's a great, yeah, that is a great talking point. Another one that I heard that kind of goes along that same line was I sat in a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and a manufacturer for drayage vehicles, which are again on site, like heavy duty, that are typically not subject to, they didn't used to be subject to any emission standards. But now with the warehouse ISR, she spoke to the fact that the warehouse ISR warehouses, operators, they wanted to get credits for investing in clean zero emission equipment. And so they, you know, reached out to her and said, hey, we need to clean up our yard vehicles. What can you give us? And what she mentioned was, knowing what the rules were forced a smarter decision making for big investment for businesses, knowing that they had to go this way anyway, knowing that this was where they were going to go. So then it took away a lot of the uncertainty of, should I do this or should I do this, or should I put my money here or should I put money here? No, if the rules heading this way, if the guardrails are saying this is where we have to function, that's certainty that I can count on, and therefore make good decisions, and we're asking them to make the right decision, right, and to do the zero emission. So yeah, this is exactly what we're hoping we'll do. Yes, Al.
So, you know, actually the certainty, and again, decades ago, actually, I heard of somebody who was saying, well, give us a regulatory certainty. I mean, that's probably what the industry is also saying, certainty that that you're not going to come back in 2 years and want us to be even cleaner. So I think if we say it's going to be, if we say this is the pathway, these are our guardrails.
Yeah.
This is what you have to aim toward.
Yeah.
Then that gives them that certainty, and you know, I guess in a sense they should know that if they're not going to, you know, go along with that we're going to still be after them. So
yeah.
you know, we say this is our goal, you know, meet us there.
Right. Yeah, like not trying to change the playbook.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Pearl, I saw your hand go up, or you're like, you know, wave of support. Does anyone who hasn't spoken, you know, maybe have something to share, or questions or ideas on this strategy, or if you'd want to get involved more?
Oh. Well, and maybe one or two people are involved, but they don't want to raise their hands as much.
Right. Well, and this is a lot of information, really. I recognize that this is a ton of information coming at folks who maybe have just heard of this for the first time. Yes, Brian, please.
Oh, hi. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute there. So I'm been doing stuff with Sierra Club related transportation for a while now as a volunteer, but I also involved in the Rail Passenger Association of California. We advocated for rail electrification for a long time, particularly for passenger because it improves passenger service, but freight as well. It's shared infrastructure opportunities for electric freight and passenger rail, which makes a lot of sense in the Inland Empire, especially, and between the ports in the Inland Empire. But
Absolutely.
I'm also part of a all volunteer group that's really gotten going in the last year with a lot more volunteers getting involved. And Adriana, our leader, is actually based in Riverside, is a PhD student at UC Riverside, and she's phenomenal. And I just put the website link, and you guys can, if you're interested, there's like a sign up and stuff in there.
Yes, I actually am getting connected to Adriana because I was talking to Brianna Egan, who is at Loma Linda medical student for sustainability, and she's a part of the electric rail movement as well. So thank you, Brian. Thanks for joining us and for sharing that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for everything everyone's doing here, and you're doing. Yeah, and so if there's AQMD meetings and stuff, be sure to send that to Adriana and stuff too, because we can get people from our group who aren't necessarily on this Zoom call or in Sierra Club to
Absolutely.
weigh in and give comment or type an email or something. So
Yes, no, that'd be perfect. And please, Brian, absolutely feel free to share any information, any of the links that we've shared, including this presentation. And anyone here on the call, absolutely feel free to it's not a Sierra Club, like we don't own this, right? It is Sierra Club. It is our partners and allies, coalition members, folks like Cecilia out bringing in the AAPI community, like really working on these constituencies that all have the same concern. We all have, really want to double down on our right to clean air, on our right to breathe. So I did want to, I did a lot of call to action right this week, and the AQMD regular board meetings are the first Friday of every month, and then they're dark in July. So this coming Friday is the first Friday of June. And this is where they will be setting the public hearing for the rail ISR for August. And it is also where there's a few other rules, including a rule about the commercial boilers and water heaters. And I dropped that link in the chat before Brian did. I can do it again. But we are doing a rally for clean air in support of not only the rail ISR, but also, and I can send you to I can open up the link and show you what else we are talking about. Rule 1146.2, commercial water heaters, boilers to zero emission. They'll also be voting on polluter fees. They will also be doing setting the public hearing. And we also want to emphasize you cannot stop at the rail yard and the warehouse. We also need a strong ports ISR. So really asking folks to join in this conversation. We'll try to do some carpooling from the IE, from the different parts of LA area. We are going to have food for folks because it is going to be a long day. We have the rally starting. Folks can meet up around 8:30. The rally will start. And then the meeting will start at 9. It does look like a lot on the agenda, so it could be a long meeting. We'll take a lunch break with the group if the meeting's not over. have lunch and then go back into the meeting or finish up for the day. But we hope if anybody can make it there as well, that's in person, but also virtual is an option as well. So I did want to leave you off with this last little bit of action that we can take this week. Especially if you learn a little bit on Tuesday and Wednesday, if you're able to participate there, then take it to in person or to that Friday meeting where the whole board will be there, and hearing our call to the strong ISR rules. And I want to I'm going to give us a few minutes back. The call was scheduled to 8 o'clock, but I do want to just end with two important things. One, Josh Fox, a gentleman who did a documentary called Gasland, talking about fracking, and through that work was able to have a fracking ban in the state of New York. He says that we should spend 95% of our time electing climate champions and 5% of our time changing our light bulbs. And so, our goal is to not only elect those climate champions, but then hold them accountable when they're in a space to make some rules. And I see your hand up, Brian.
Oh, yes. I just wanted to say one more thing about the electric rail stuff before we go. So
Yes,
one of the
please.
links I put in the chat was a reference that people can look at before Tuesday or Wednesday if they're giving comment on the indirect source rule. And the document, it's on the documents page of Californians for Electric Rail, but it's a white paper we put together. I was kind of the compiler of it. We finished it not quite a year ago, but it's specific to electric freight rail in the Inland Empire. And it's a rather technical document. It's kind of long. There's like appendices. You don't have to read the whole thing. You'd probably fall asleep. But it would, it goes to the question of, oh, well, they say the technology's not here, and would you do that? How would you have BNSF freight trains all be electric powered? And in this, we show this is exactly how you do it. We got where the substations are. We got everything to, as like a reasonable cost estimate. And just to provide some ammo if people want to say, like, this is how you do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brian, we should talk some more. I would love for you all to participate in the rail convening and again, equip our communities with this kind of information and power to flip the narrative, to be action, so that it serves community and not just industry. Yeah, thank you for that. I love it. And thank you, Audrey, for your comments. I appreciate. I know, again, this is really dense information. It seems like a lot, but any place that you can plug in, I really, really do appreciate. Here is my information and our X account. Joining the campaign. If you aren't already, please go ahead and join in here at this bit.ly. Sign up so that we can keep you involved, keep you up to date with what's going on. This is a crazy week. There's a ton happening, but we'll get back together in 2 weeks for this webinar series and continue this conversation, bring new folks to learn about this, but then also give you updates on what happened, this week, what happened on Friday, where we are in our community meetings, to again start really keep building the momentum so that we have strong community support, strong talking points, informed community, so that we can hold these folks accountable and make them do the right thing. So with that, I will end the recording, and if anyone else wants anything else to share, I'll hang out for a little bit and work with you all and chat with you all. But I do appreciate y'all coming in and taking some time and listening and sharing your stories and sharing your enthusiasm. So let's stop the recording. Yay! Good work, everyone.